Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we've got some things to talk about from about a month and a bit ago. You see, a while back Creative Assembly did a Q&A for Warhammer 3 and they said that, yep, 6.0 might have some map changes. This was in reference to the whole launch of Thrones of Decay where the developer Sean responded, "We haven't added any new regions in this patch, but we already have plans for further updates to the Immortal Empires map in 6.0. Now this is actually quite important to talk about because one, this could have been the original roadmap. Some of you seem to forget that the original roadmap actually had Slaanesh involved. It was supposed to be the next DLC, or plans had already changed by then. We don't know because there's been a lot of leaks which may or may not be true. It's been very confusing lately, but it's safe to assume that by that point they've already locked in Khorne, Ogres, and Greenskins. And this is where things can get kind of interesting because map changes usually involve a few additions, but could also be the extension that we were looking for going into either Ind or Khorne. Which actually makes sense, because one of the new characters that we're expecting here is Arbaal the Undefeated as a mortal lord for Khorne, and yeah, his character during the end times was an Ind. Now you might be wondering, oh, well, why is this relevant? Well, a lot of characters in Warhammer 3 so far are actually in the end time start positions. Valk is fighting up north, going down to fight the Dark Elves. That's part of the end times. Festus the Leech Lord being smack in the middle of the Empires, actually because of the end times too. I believe Scarbrand is also there in the southern Badlands because of an end time start position. Thanquil summoning him. So this could be a reason to see a little bit of Ind finally opened up. Again, not for Ind itself, but rather adding in characters for a little bit of faction diversity. And that also provides a little bit more danger to the Cathayan factions who currently have their best life in Grand Cathay, since there's not really that much to fight against them. This could also be a way for Creative Assembly to start future-proofing, because the Monkey King is going to happen eventually, so they start opening up Ind now. It gives everyone more or less a little bit of a hint towards the future, and prepares them for the eventual map changes that would have to come in when Games Workshop say, this needs to happen, this needs to be renamed, blah 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 blah. Obviously Arbaal the Undefeated hasn't been confirmed just yet, but I mean there's been a lot of hints towards Arbaal, like loads of loading screens, and it would make sense for them to have in a mortal champion to have a stark contrast with a demon champion that we currently have with Scarbrand. It's a very educated guess. I have been kind of right about these types of things before because it's kind of easy to kind of track what Creative Assembly want to do. That being said, the recent DLC has been a pretty big surprise, but yeah, I think that this would work quite well. If we do end up with Golgfag as a legendary lord, which I imagine so, considering that we've had a untextured model, it did have a name of Mung Proxy. However, all the stuff that was actually named in the DB was on the Golgfag, so I could imagine him being an Ind also and easily moved. The great thing about Ogres is that you can easily move them around. It would be kind of nicer if they just swapped him with Skrarg, to be honest, because I would love to see Golgfag Maneater in the Border Princes, being close to the Dogs of War, essentially, because that's kind of what his main, thing is about. But for the sake of it, just to flesh out Ind, if they're going to open up a fair amount of the country, I mean, in a perfect world, they'd open it up all, but if they're going to open up a big chunk, say probably all the northern part of it, yeah, it would make sense to put another legendary lord there, so that way it's not just one character building up an empire and smashing its way into Grand Cathay. One thing that's very important is if they're going to open up locations, they can't allow a faction to kind of steamroll from the very beginning, or else it's going to cause issues for everyone. And that also includes minor AI factions. But I'm thinking about this as a player base, right? While the most of you have a few good 100 hours, maybe 1,000 hours onto the game series, some people might not. Some people are fairly new. I know I've seen some people coming onto my streams before saying, hey, I can't win on normal, what do you suggest, and stuff like that. We have to keep those players in mind. If you put a character like Arbaal, a Khorne character, which Khorne can kind of get quite strong if left uncontested, he'll push up into Grand Cathay and cause problems for anyone playing Zhao Ming, Geralt, or anything else. The big question comes when we start looking towards possible Greenskin lords. So, we don't know who it could be. It could be Snagler, it could be Gorfang, it could be, I don't know, Gorbad, anyone really. The big question is none of them really fit around those areas, so maybe in the Badlands? Thing is, they could put a character anywhere and just try to figure out a story, which could be great, but Creative Assembly seem to be focusing on lore-friendly start positions in some cases, which may or may not be out of the insistence of Games Workshop. End of the day, again, not really too bothered if they decide to just plop another character into the Badlands. There's still a decent amount of location, and the great thing about Greenskins is that the closer the other Greenskin factions are, the more of a chance that you have to confederate. It's just like the Northskins. People seem to forget that that's a thing, mostly because the Greenskin factions end up dying out fairly quickly. And let's be honest, Grimgor doesn't need another faction near him because, well, he generally survives. The last thing is what's going to be the FLC, which honestly I think would be Skulltaker. It just kind of makes sense. You know, we had Epidemius. It would be cool to have Skulltaker also get all the smaller but still very well-known characters from the Demons of Chaos in there. And that way, Khorne has 3 legendary lords. He is generally known to be around the areas of the Dolgan, the Kurgan, and so on. The only problem is that, well, they would have to move Kolak, and I don't know if that would be a good idea. Mostly because, yeah, it's very close to the Mountains of Morn. I very much doubt that a Khornate faction would have access to mountain climate, which would make it pretty difficult. Khorne as a faction right now does suffer when you're trying to expand quite heavily, so it doesn't play well in a gameplay perspective. Personally, I would put Skulltaker down in the Southern Chaos Waste, which right now is pretty much what, Oxyodal, Kairos, and that's it. Well, you've got Teclis coming down and so on, but having another Chaos faction down there in the Southern Chaos Waste, acting as he's just come from the Realm of Chaos and he's moving around, would allow you to kind of build up from that location. It's a better climate for you anyway, and you could provide some much needed support to Skarbrand, eventually confederating him. The reason why Skarbrand suffers so much is because his climate isn't that great. If you actually end up moving him towards like the Northern Chaos Waste, he does much better. And I could see Skulltaker up north, but I imagine that they'd want to keep that clear because Valkyr is already there, and that gives again more variety. While not part of the same race, they are part of the same umbrella. So yeah, that's my reasoning. I could be wrong though. Now obviously everything here is some theory crafting, which is always kind of fun. There has been some talk of people saying, well, what if this ends up being the Realm of Chaos? Which, I mean, could work, but I don't see it being happening anytime soon. If they do a Realm of Chaos addition into Total War Warhammer 3 for the Immortal Empires map, it could end up being during the end times, right? Where they might add in extra lords for all the demon factions and go, hell, let's just have this as a dungeon system, something that I've talked about a long time. It would be kind of cool, but I feel like it's too difficult to add in. I mean, you guys have seen the Old World mod by Chaos Robbie. There's some clear limitations there because the realms were added, but it's essentially a bit different and you have to physically walk there rather than teleporting. That stuff can be kind of complicated, so maybe Creative Assembly are thinking about adding them in the future, which would be great. There is a big empty chunk there on the right hand side of the map, but maybe in the future. That's the way I'm thinking about it. But let me know what you guys think about all this in the comments below. I could be wrong. This is why I'm just throwing out some character names, the ones that kind of fit the most to me here, but hey, it could be like they might just change a few areas and that's it. But in most cases, they have been changing areas pretty well. And I think now more than ever, it's probably the best time to start opening up Ind in preparation for Monkey King. Even if Monkey King is like next year or the year after, we don't know how long this game is going to last. It's probably best to start getting people acquainted with new territories. Plus, it gets people talking, and that's always the big thing. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. I do apologize that this video is late. We had to deal with a hornet's nest. That was fun. But yeah, fun. Have a great day, guys. I'm going off to the beach.